Let's talk about the psychological manipulations of the sinner's prayer. Hi, I'm Andrew Jasko. I'm the founder of Life After Dogma, and I help people heal from their religious trauma and discover a healthy and healing relationship with spirituality. So, if you're interested in getting coaching and healing, you can sign up for an inner freedom session. The link is here below. So, the sinner's prayer and the altar call. This is sort of the initiation ritual of evangelical Christianity and fundamentalist Christian groups. It's the sales pitch. It's a condensed doctrinal statement of what evangelical Christians believe. And by praying this prayer, you sign up for the marketing scheme, for the whole package deal of Christianity. So let's break this down. This is a form of religious manipulation and religious abuse. And it's essentially a prayer to relieve anxiety through inviting a strong man to take over your soul, to give up your responsibility, and to surrender your agency to a cult. So, the first part of this prayer is typically confessing that you're a sinner. I'm a sinner, help me, God, which is an admission that you're powerless and you're broken. That's the teaching of this statement. I am helpless, I'm weak, I'm pathetic. It's a crushing of the ego and a sense of self worth, a submissive act, and a statement that I need to be saved from myself and a maniacal universe. The universe is out to get me, God's wrath, and God is out to get me. And I need to surrender and view myself as evil and wicked and depraved in order to find the salvation of this cult ruler. So it's a really unhealthy way to view oneself in order to get salvation. It's a fundamental disempowerment, this view of the self as broken, evil, and deserving divine wrath. So after you confess that you're evil and broken and powerless, you confess that Jesus is the way, or whatever deity there is the way. And this is essentially a cry to take away your responsibility, to give up your agency to the deity. My agency isn't enough. I'm powerless. I can't help myself. I can't work through my problems. I need an easy solution that shuts down all of my ambiguity and confusion. This one religion is the way to solve my problems and to solve my existential anxiety. It's this easy, formulaic, intellectual solution that closes off confusion, that closes off thinking, and that closes down really responsibility. I don't have to work through my problems that make me feel helpless, that I need saving from. This thing promises me a ready made solution. So then there's an ask for Jesus or the deity, come into my heart. I surrender. I give you my life. Literally, take over my soul, take over my body. And this is a confession that I can't trust myself. It's a disavowing of my faculties, and that I need to be merged with someone more powerful than me in order to be healed. So it's losing of the self, giving up of the identity in exchange for the power of the church institution and its promises. And it's really a kind of possession by the deity, a kind of spiritual possession that's happening here. Because life and its problems, or the problems the person experiences or believes that they experiences, are overwhelming. Because sometimes this sense of powerlessness is actually induced by the people who are evangelizing. The person might not initially feel powerless, but they convince them that they're a sinner and that they need the power of this religious group. And so the other step here is asking for forgiveness. Forgive me of my sins, absolve me. And this is not real forgiveness. Real forgiveness is a processing of one's emotions, of really getting in touch with your experiences, your traumas, whatever it is that's causing some kind of bitterness or wounding, and really working through that. So what this is an emotional repression. It's sort of pushing down your feelings of guilt and giving them away. And it doesn't actually work. It doesn't really produce real forgiveness, because forgiveness is the result of working through something. And moreover, it's asking for forgiveness for things that aren't your fault. Like being convinced that the death of this deity is you're somehow responsible for it in a cosmic way through your mistakes or your moral failings. So there's a taking on of responsibility that isn't even one's own, and then asking to be cleansed and absolved through the deity and the institution. So the sinner's prayer, usually, this ritual is often carried out during an altar call, which is a central ceremony and ritual of evangelical and fundamentalist Christianity, and there are similar forms in other religions. It's typically at the end of a sermon. Many ministers will perform an altar call at every church service at the end, and they'll call people to come up to the altar, often bow down in a posture of submission or to receive prayer, and to pray the sinner's prayer in order to ask Jesus to come into their hearts. It's an evangelistic technique, and it's predatory. The intention here is often to grow the church, to gain more members, and it's more serving of the institution than the people who are receiving it, because it doesn't actually look at their needs. It's just sort of this overarching catch-all induction ceremony into the cult. And it's predatory partly because of the way it's done. It incites fear and creates panic instead of inspiring people to make informed decisions for themselves. So preachers will generally tend to convince people that they're in this battle for their souls. There might be demonic forces trying to tempt them, and that if they don't ask Jesus into their heart, they'll often say, "You could die at any moment. And if you don't pray this prayer, you might end up in hell." So it's really creating a fight, flight, or freeze response, creating a feeling of panic, and pressuring a person to make this life changing decision just based on manipulating their emotions. It's really not how you should make a major decision. If you're going to join a group such as this, I would hope it's not based on this kind of a paranoia and fear. It's also a message that the world is far more dangerous than it actually is. So it inflates your personal problems. Maybe you feel powerless or helpless, or you have an addiction, or you want to belong to a group. And so it inflates these problems to a universal atrocity. Like this personal problem that you're having is a cosmic issue that incurs the wrath of the deity, and there's this massive existential life or death thing. It's the nature is not actually on that scale, the nature of the problem, but it's really puffed up so that you feel that you need to do this now. This is also based on a fear of hell, the worst psychological and spiritual torment imaginable. So, highly motivating thing. And what happens when people pray the sinner's prayer is that it can create an obsessive compulsive kind of process, because it doesn't actually alleviate a person's anxiety or sense of powerlessness. It sort of glosses it over and maybe represses those fearful emotions or painful emotions that a person has, but only temporarily. And preachers, in their eagerness to get people to come up to the altar call to get as many numbers as they can, will teach their own members that they need to constantly pray this prayer or constantly come up to the altar call, because if you sin or if you half-heartedly devoted yourself to God, you don't really know whether your last sinner's prayer was effective, because you could have lost your standing with the deity. So as they're constantly encouraging people to pray this prayer and ask for forgiveness of their sin, it's really creating a mental process and hardwiring the brain in certain ways, creating these neurological connections of fear and anxiety and compulsive confession to counter that fear. And these two things reinforce each other. So I remember when I was a child, I heard these altar calls over and over again every Sunday or every church service. And I was so afraid of hell and of losing my salvation that I would pray the sinner's prayers sometimes thousands of times a day. And I was afraid of falling asleep at night without praying the sinner's prayer or confessing my sin because I might lose consciousness and end up in hell. So, this is the kind of thing that happens on a regular basis to many, many Christians who are devoted and faithful and well intended. Because of this manipulation, there's this OCD process that happens with this sinner's prayer. And the sinner's prayer can really be a terrifying, torturous thing. And children are being taken advantage of. People who are vulnerable are being taken advantage of by being convinced that this artificial solution is going to wipe away their problems. And this prayer is literally used to create the anxiety that it promises to relieve. So, please point out in this video if there are any other manipulations that you've experienced as a result of this sinner's prayer. Maybe it's something that you're still working through, just an obsessive, compulsive thought policing, even if you're not a Christian anymore, or if you are, just constantly searching your mind and your emotions and this perfectionistic type OCD mentality. Again, if you are looking to work through these issues with someone, book a coaching session with me, an inner freedom session below. Check out my writings and resources on these topics at lifeafterdogma.org. Please like and subscribe to my Life After Dogma YouTube channel. Thank you so much.